Alright, what is up? Welcome back to another video. Let me move that out of the way. Put that up there. And today, I'm going to talk about a camera. Do a quick little walkthrough of this thing. Just for the sake of, I guess, what would it be? Clarity? Honesty? Something like that. I bought this camera for I think $25, 20 bucks maybe. Camera, lens, case, all that came with it. I have batteries in it, it works. I'm trying to sell it. This is not an advertisement for this camera. I think it's kind of trash, but I want to talk about it anyway because it is interesting, and I referenced it in a past video, which I will link up there. So I was talking about Pentax autofocus 35mm SLRs. This is one of them. This is the ZX60, also known as the MZ60. I'm not entirely sure what the distinction is. Sometimes they'll name it one thing in one market and then another in another market. Like in North America, the Pentax Super Program was called the Super Program, and in Japan it was called the Super A, which is interesting. Minolta in America, North American markets, was the SRT 202. In Europe, I believe it was the SRT 303. So it depends. I don't really know what the whole shebang is behind that, but that's just how it is. But this is the ZX60, which is the same thing as the MZ60. It's released in about 2002, I believe. It is a fully electrical autofocus SLR, plastic body, no mechanical speeds whatsoever. It sounds horrific, and it has just a litany of problems that I will go into. The thing I like most about this, though, because there are things that I do like about this camera, I really like the form factor. In terms of the autofocus SLR era, there's a lot that are really huge and clunky and big. Look at the EOS 650, the OM4 something, the OM404 I think it is. Olympus is only stride into the 35mm autofocus SLR market is the worst thing ever. It's just like massively clunky. The older Pentax series, I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but those are also really big and clunky and awkward to look at. A lot of the old Canon stuff, not as nice. But this is very compact in form. This again was released in 2002, so it should be. I think the grip is a little bit weird. It has the two-tone kind of grandma gold mixed with black here. It takes two CR2 batteries in the bottom right there and has this little thing. I was very impressed when I got this camera because this was not broken off. They usually are, but this is in really good condition, I would say, overall. And if we take a look at the lens mount, you'll notice that it is a K-mount lens. So you're thinking, okay, that's awesome because I have mini K-mount lenses. I will just take one, for instance, this 51.4, and I'll just put that on there, and look at that. This is like a perfect little rig. You're good to go. 1.4 with a electrical body. This will be perfect. I can't wait. It's not gonna work, okay? This is one of two of the Pentax autofocus SLR options in the early 2000s that did not allow you to use your K-mount lenses. It does have the same K-mount, but this is a KAF mount, which is the K autofocus lensing system. Lenses include this fine specimen. This is the 28 to 90. I believe it is a 3.5 fixed, but we will maybe find out. It might not be, who knows. Anyway, this is kind of a terrible lens as well. I don't really like the action to, 3.5 to 5.6. So really a slow lens, but a good consumer lens. So we'll leave it there. And this is a good consumer camera. Some of the other technical things, it has a 12-second self-timer, which is kind of odd. It has a little LED there to show when it is going off. As I said, it can't use any manual focus lenses, but there is a manual focus option on that, so if that's your cup of tea, go for it. You'll notice that when I select the manual focus and the autofocus, that little screw pops out. This is connected to the motor driver, which changes the focus in the camera, or in the lens body. It has a range of 30 seconds to 1/2000th of a second of a shutter, which is cool, I guess, if that's your cup of tea. I feel like the ME Super can also do 1/2000th of a second, so the fact that that's as high as this goes is kind of whatever. It does have an onboard flash as well as a hot shoe. Flash sync speed is, I believe, 1/100th of a second, which is kind of slow. There's also a bulb feature. There is a kind of, I don't know, an LED readout with this really haunting smiley face that it just is burned into the memory of my soul there, as well as other like autofocus options that you can select. The autofocus in this is okay. It's not like, whoa, that's lightning quick, but like it'll get you there good enough. The flash has relatively decent output, and that's pretty much it. If you look inside here, you'll see pretty basic. You got a DX code reader, so the idea is you just put your film in there, bring the film lead over to there, and it will then auto feed the roll for you. And then if you want the flash, you click up on this button. I believe some of the auto settings will have it pop up for you. It's a pretty effective flash. The sound is pretty horrific. A couple things to note with the Pentax autofocus line, such as this, is that not only are they kind of not great, not really well designed, especially these like kind of lower tier options, there are like a list of more professional Pentax autofocus systems. I can't think of off the top of my head, but they're pretty good, and they use an upgraded mount to this, which is the KAF2. This is obviously more consumer, marketed and all that. And it will work. However, sometimes they don't, and that's due to the motor drive system, which I believe sits about right here. There is the plastic gearing that sits out of that, and over time, those things just go bad because plastic breaks. And so what you're essentially buying when you buy one of these is nothing that's like really time tested, because it can't really be put through its paces because it will break. And it's kind of like, in my mind, it's very similar to buying like an X700, where fun to use, really capable cameras in certain circumstances, but inevitably will fail. And it's just kind of a time bomb as to when it will fail. And I bought this primarily because I thought this was one you could throw the older lens on. I did not know, because there's a bunch of these, they all kind of look the same. And this is the most generic version of that. So that was my mistake, and I'm selling it because I just quite frankly don't need it. And it is like, it's a perfectly functional and fine camera. With the lens, like, it's perfectly fine. The flash helps it out a bunch. But it's not really where I'm at anymore. Thinking about the things that I kind of like shooting, the cameras I like, this is not one of them. And that's pretty much it, to be honest. I don't really have any other like grandiose ideas, thoughts, or feelings about this camera. I don't necessarily like it. The bag that it came with is kind of cool. I think the strap is kind of neat. The styling overall is interesting. I kind of like the sloped prism here and the grooves for the flash. I think that's interesting. The back grip here is a little bit harsh, I think. Like, it just kind of has that like really hard ridge to it. And the front grip here, again, it just feels like it's trying really hard with the strap in the way. Like the strap mounting being back here, I think, is a little bit odd. But for my hand size, which granted it is a fairly large hand size, it just never really sits quite comfortably. I feel like I'm kind of smashing my fingers into it to try to get a decent picture. And I also really don't like the readout here. And then this toggle here, it's more of a, it's just a little slide. Like, it looks like it should be a dial, but it's more just a little, and the sound is a little, I don't know how I feel about that. I also don't really like the buttons, but I don't really like a lot of the Pentax buttons on things. I just prefer dials myself. That's a personal preference. And as far as I know, the latches on these have always been pretty okay. It's usually this system that will fail you. There's like a little seam there, and because it's all plastic, it will usually break. Other than that, pretty good camera. Interesting at the very least. The lens is adequate. It gives you a wide range of options, 28 to 90, like that's pretty much all of your bases covered. But it is very slow. 3.5 to 5.6 is it's tough. That's kind of a tough thing. That's a huge stop down, but it does work for what it is. If you are looking to buy one of these cameras, I would recommend other cameras probably. I think it's good for beginners. They usually go for about 20 bucks or something like that online, but again, it's one of those things where it's not particularly inspiring to use, and I just feel like there's better options out there. Like I feel like a Spotmatic is a better option. In one, you're gonna get that more styled, like vintagey look of a camera. I have one actually, right? I have a better looking one actually right here. Like this just looks visually more aesthetically appealing than the grandma gold here, but also functionality, it works better. It's more reliable, I think. You can use a more variety of lenses that are faster, slower. It just, overall, this I think is better investment than this. However, this does offer autofocus, this does offer an onboard flash, this does offer a lot of convenience, and it is really easy to use. So I definitely understand the appeal to something like this. I just think that there are better versions of this. I think it's the ZX50, I believe it is, or the MZ50. I think that's the better one. This is just kind of the weird one in the middle of the pack that's not very good. This is kind of like the T70. No, that's going to be a deep cut. Nobody's going to understand that. But anyway, that's all pretty much. I will leave that there. Also, I want to make a really quick note going back to the T70, T50 thing. A while ago I made this video called like T50 repair, and I'll put the link to it up there. And I just thought it was like a funny video because it was me destroying a T50 to get to the prism to replace the prism of a K1000, because the T50 I got was completely thrashed, and it's just not worth it to try to fix one of those. If they do work, they're great cameras. They just usually don't because they use AA batteries and people leave them in there for too long. Battery corrosion is a thing. It's a whole deal. But I got a comment like not too long ago, a couple months ago, and some lady was like, I will never send my camera to you for service. And I'm like, okay, like obviously it was a joke, but all right, fair, understood. Also, if you do have a T50, please don't send it in. I don't want to work on it. It's just like, oh no. It's just, also it was my camera. Like I bought a bunch of T50s, so it was really, really silly, and it just made me laugh because I read it and I was like, oh my goodness. It's a video from like, it was one of my first videos I made too, so like it was a deep cut, and I just imagine this lady was like searching like, oh, T50 repair, and she sees my just utter monstrosity of a video, and she's like, oh, this is the worst thing I've ever seen. Anyway, that's all. ZX60, it is a camera. It works well enough, but you know, there are many better options, so bear that in mind. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate it. As always, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff, and I will catch you on the next one.